I'm gonna be annoying for a little bit, so bear with me here, but... Patrik Allvin! Oh, baby, come on! Come on! Ah, man! Now, I'm gonna go out there and say that I can understand why a lot of people on Canucks Twitter and Canucks Instagram and social media and a lot of my friends in real life that are messaging me constantly about this stuff and that I'm going to see later today at the hockey tournament, etc. I can understand why everybody is pissed. I personally choose not to be pissed, though. Like, I know, I had to let it out. Oh, Allvin, whatever. Gotta let it out sometimes. But I'm gonna choose to just look at things at face value, try to assess the situation with as much rationality as I can, and not let those emotions get the better of me. Because at the end of the day, the Vancouver Canucks are a hockey team that I myself have no association with. I don't make any decisions, thus it's all out of my control, and as a fan, I can sit here and think all I want about what I'd do if I was the GM instead, but that probably doesn't really accomplish anything. With that being said, though, let's go and talk about the Vancouver Canucks and their trade deadline day. Because everything wrapped up about 2 hours ago. We had the Patrik Allvin press conference, that in which I honestly had a lot of difficulty watching, not because of the accessibility, it was very much there on Twitter, it's just, I could not go out there, listen to that, and feel good about what I was hearing. For one, the Vancouver Canucks still have JT Miller and Brock Boeser as a part of their roster. You also have Conor Garland. They're all still here. The Canucks made one trade on deadline day, sending away Curtis Lazar, which means that the Vancouver Canucks and their willingness to facilitate trades as a third team in was not used here at all. The Canucks did not use the salary cap space that they got when putting all these players, Mikheyev, OEL, etc., on the LTIR. And you know, that on one hand is not the worst thing in the world. Oh, they weren't able to find a third team trade where they could act as a broker and get another pick in return. They weren't able to do that. Okay, that's fine. But the fact that JT Miller is still a Vancouver Canuck is a pretty interesting thing. Mostly because Miller and his $8 million AAV contract kicks in next season. For this season, though, and heading into this trade deadline, he had no trade protection. And with all the talk about teams like Pittsburgh and Carolina looking for players with longer-term guys that sort of filled the needs of their short-term desires, you talk about guys like Boeser, you talk about guys like Miller that were right there in that conversation, and you say, okay, they weren't able to make a trade. Why? This was a tweet that was published in the middle of the trade deadline period, and it kind of got a lot of people up in arms. It's on Darren Dreger's TSN 1050 radio hit on whether Dubas is done ahead of today's deadline, the Penguins' interest in Miller, and more. Jeff Veillette quote tweeted this. This is from 5 a.m. this morning. Vancouver just said, "We like the offer, we just can't take it. Because it was draft picks. We need a centerman. And frankly, we're not rebuilding in Vancouver, and JT Miller is a big part of our future." If Darren Dreger is correct about this regarding a Pittsburgh trade offer for Miller, then Vancouver is unsalvageable. And this tweet sort of went viral. It's got 200,000 views at the time of looking at it and making this video here. But it kind of went viral for a reason. Because a lot of Canucks fans looked at this and said, wait a minute, you're getting offered draft picks for JT Miller and you're not saying yes? The team wants a center? Okay, well, what freaking centers are you going to get from Pittsburgh? Ryan Poehling? Sidney Crosby? Evgeny Malkin? You're not getting like most of those guys. So what the hell, why are you even talking to Pittsburgh about a JT Miller trade anyway if you're just going to say no? Bro, you go out there and you see the other trades that were made by Vancouver. Okay, first round pick out, Filip Hronek in, and a second. Yeah, Filip Hronek for a first and a second. You gotta remember that second. And you think about all the other moves the Canucks could have made here, and you say, all right, they had an opportunity. If you really wanted to shell out Boeser and or Miller, to sort of recoup the assets you got when you traded for Filip Hronek. If you get like a first round pick and a second for Boeser or something, or for Miller or whatever, then you sort of keep the value of the draft picks in your system, but you're just changing the player that you have on your team. Does that kind of make sense? Like, Filip Hronek is a right-handed defenseman and he's a good player. Yes, that's it. It's just the timeline as to what the Canucks are right now, leading to the acquisition of him in the first place, it doesn't really make too much sense. Like, the team acquiring a defenseman like that is good enough, and I did say you have the benefit of the doubt because Hronek is young enough to justify saying, okay, we could try to build around him. Build around him, Petey, Hughes, Demko, maybe Hronek is in there too. But you still have to go out there and try to capitalize on other players that you got. Open up cap space other ways. Boeser, Miller, Garland, these guys will help you get those picks back. And this is all we get. Canucks admitted that the salary cap was harder than they thought, and then they added more salary. They said they weren't in the right cycle to trade high draft picks, and then they traded high draft picks. They bought more than they sold at the deadline. Now, you had Patrik Allvin in his press conference going out there saying things like this: I never had an offer for JT Miller. Really? Okay. I don't believe that in the slightest, but okay. You then had Patrik Allvin also saying this: I'm not collecting picks just to collect picks. I'm collecting picks to either draft hockey players or trade to get hockey players in here. And, I mean, look, it's a weird thing to go out there and say. It is, because if you look at the first reply, I mean, Cam Robinson says this: just wondering what the other option would be. Can you do anything else with draft picks? You can get picks to draft hockey players or trade to get good hockey players too. Like, what? What other things are there that you can do with draft picks that you would not want to get draft picks to do? Like, ay, dude. There was a report going out there saying that the Canucks had picks on the table for Miller, but they just didn't want to do it. They wanted a center back. And it's like, okay, if you really wanted a center, you trade Miller away, you get something in return, get some draft picks, whatever, and maybe you use those draft picks to get a center. Maybe you trade away Miller, and your team sucks so bad because you don't have Miller in your lineup anymore, and at the draft in 2023, you get Connor Bedard. There's your center. Like, there's no long-term planning here. And this is kind of the problem that we have seen for years in Vancouver, that they're so focused on the now, that it's difficult to justify when you see them lack the moves like they had the opportunity to do in this trade deadline period. I defended the Hronek trade 2 days ago, yes, and I'll say that I did because I can understand the philosophy behind building around a guy that is like Hronek, who is as young as he is and who is a right D. Because there's no other right D on this team that's as good as Hronek. Like, straight up, Schenn, Pullman, Hamonic, Tyler Myers, these guys are not Filip Hronek. Hronek is better than all of them, and Hronek is younger than most of them too. So, I can understand Hronek. It's just putting your team in a position to not capitalize on what you have in front of you. Teams that want to get JT Miller, teams that want Boeser. You say, okay, well, the price is not meeting it. Like, they're not giving us the price. Okay, then what? You're just gonna leave and not do this? Like, I don't know. What else is there to talk about, man? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Vancouver Canucks and their trade deadline. They made a trade. They traded away Lazar. They got a draft pick, which is nice, but the big pieces, they're still here. And I think Miller's got a no-move clause next year, right? So this guy's going to be sticking around for a long time now, isn't he? Patrik Allvin said that Miller is a part of their future, and I guess he's really trying to cement that here now with the decisions made in this year's trade deadline period. But thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.